In Colossians 4:18, the Apostle Paul, writing from a jail cell, said to other believers, "Remember my chains." Hi, Alex McFarland's here. A very important show today. We're going to talk about the plight of the persecuted Christians around the world, especially in some localities that have been very much in the news recently. And we have a very special guest, Brad Brandon from acrossnigeria.org. He's an expert on the persecuted church, and we're very honored to have him with us now. Brad Brandon, thank you for the work you're doing around the world, and thank you for being with us today.
Hey, Alex, thanks. It's good to be on with you.
Well, it's good to talk about some very important issues, but before we go too much farther, for those that may be unaware, tell us about acrossnigeria.org, the great work you're doing, and we'll get into our conversation proper. But tell us about your organization.
It operates in the most dangerous place to be a Christian right now. And when I say that, I mean, if you take all of the Christians that were killed in the entire world last year, 70% of them were killed in northern Nigeria, the areas we work in. These are areas that are controlled by Boko Haram and ISWA, which is the Islamic State of West Africa, both terrorist groups who are responsible for killing probably around, I think the numbers are coming in around 60,000 Christians since 2009. So our organization goes into these areas, and our first priority, number one, is to help the persecuted Christians in those areas. These are areas where people don't have access to food, they don't have access to clean water, medical care, education, schools, all because they identify as Christians. They claim to be identified next to Jesus Christ, and that causes them to be severely persecuted. They're second-class citizens in this part of the world. So we go into these areas and we plant underground churches. These are communities that, the church isn't just a place you go to, it's a community you live in northern Nigeria. They depend on that for their survival. And the other part of that is that we also have a refugee facility where people who are being hunted by these terrorist groups, we bring them to our refugee facility and that we help them to restart their lives. The other part of our ministry, which is equally important, is that we bring the gospel of Jesus Christ into these areas. We do that through different platforms that we have. The biggest platform we have is education. So we start schools for Muslim children in northern Nigeria, and we like to use those as a platform and look for opportunities that God gives us to share the love of Jesus Christ with those communities. So preaching the gospel and helping the persecuted, those are the two biggest focuses that we have.
Brad, as far as you know, how long has this persecution been going on?
It hasn't always been going on, not like this. If you go back 25 years ago, Muslims and Christians in northern Nigeria lived in relative peace with each other. It's only been probably within the last 15 years that it's really intensified. And we've been operating there for about the last 10 years. So we've watched it grow and get worse and worse every single year.
And what triggered this, intensification of the killing and persecution?
Mostly it's because of the growth of groups like ISWA and Boko Haram. That's what's really brought instability into the region. And with that instability has allowed Christian persecution to thrive in those areas.
Hey, let me ask you this, because I speak on a lot of college campuses, and Americans, secular liberal educators and pundits and talking heads on media, endlessly they say Islam is a religion of peace, and that any that engage in terrorism, I've been on shows where they'll say, Westerners will just say, well, those are not true Muslims. What do you say to that? Because I've got a lot of data, even from secular sources, that would say differently. But to those who endlessly perpetuate the mantra that Islam is a religion of peace, and any killing, any terrorism, any persecution, that's just not real Islam. How do you, as a boots on the ground, eyewitness, how do you respond to that?
I would flip that around and say many Muslims are peaceful. They're absolutely right. In fact, I would even say most of the Muslims that I work with are peaceful in nature. All they want to do is provide opportunities to their families, their children. The issue is that the ones that are peaceful are the ones who are not following the Quran. The ones who are radicalized are the ones who are taking the Quran literal and following it through. The
Yeah.
Quran calls for violence on non-believers and the infidel, and I'm sure your audience is well aware of that. So I would flip that around and say just the opposite to make a very different point.
You know, Brad, theatlantic.com, which it's not a Christian site or even conservative site by any means. So lest anyone think that it's just some right-wing evangelical website, it's a serious journalistic site, but secular. But theatlantic.com, about 2 years ago, had an article in the aftermath of the October 7, 2023 Hamas attacks in Israel, and they said exactly what you just said. Um, they said, look, Western academics continually tell us that true Islam is about peace, but they said, you know, we're reticent to admit this, but the truth is the faithful Muslims, quote unquote, are the jihadists. And really, the non-jihadists are the backsliders. And I think that's hard for naive Westerners to get their head around.
Yeah, some of the evidence that I can see of that is there is some Muslim on Muslim violence in northern Nigeria.
True.
Boko Haram is known for kidnapping children from Muslim schools, blowing up mosques at times. And the reason that they do that is because they're attacking Muslims who do not hold to the true faith. They're attacking the liberal Muslims, if you will, because they're not holding to the Quran. And that's by and large the reason for the Muslim on Muslim violence in northern Nigeria.
For those just tuning in, we're talking with Brad Brandon of acrossnigeria.org and talking about persecuted Christians. And if you're a believer, if you're part of a church, as we hope you are, and if you're a minister, for goodness sakes, we want you to raise awareness, to pray. We're going to talk further about that. But Brad, in mid-October 2025, surprisingly, and I applaud this, but not a preacher, not an evangelical, but the professed atheist, left-leaning commentator Bill Maher began to really sound the alarm about the killing of Christians in Niger. And frankly, I pray for Bill Maher. Where he's been going in his content in recent months is very encouraging. I pray for him. I mean, could you imagine if he became a follower of Christ, all the good he could do? But just speak to the irony of that, if you would, Brad, that a professed atheist political commentator is really at the absolute forefront of trying to raise awareness about the killing of Christians worldwide.
It's really kind of ironic who God chooses to use to further messages that need to be proclaimed. I look at that, and when I first saw that, it's a 47-second clip where he highlights the Christian persecution in northern Nigeria. This coming from a guy, as you mentioned, Bill Maher, an atheist, a left-leaning to say the least. He's even been very critical and made fun of Christians at times on his show. He comes out and talks about the mass genocide that's happening in northern Nigeria, and he even criticizes those who are saying there's a genocide happening in Gaza, and says, where are they? Where are they when it comes to the thousands, tens of thousands of Christians being killed in northern Nigeria? I go back and I look at that. We've been trumpeting this message of this Christian genocide for 10 years, probably a little over 10 years now. We saw it happening a long time ago just because that's where we work. Tried to draw attention to it. Church wasn't really interested. Media wasn't really interested, but we kept pressing forward. And I just think it's very ironic, and I love how God works, that he takes somebody like Bill Maher, and who devotes 47 seconds to his show on this, and from his declaration on his show and his needling of the left on their silence of the real genocide that's happening. Conservative media picked it up, liberal media picked it up, podcasters picked it up, and it has been all over the news ever since. So I applaud Bill Maher. I thank him for bringing it to the forefront, and I'm glad that he did.
Indeed, indeed. Let's talk about President Donald Trump because I've got to say, Brad, in 2015, when I met Donald Trump just momentarily at an event in D.C., and I just felt impressed that God's hand was on his life. And so since 2015, much at the expense of some friendships I have in the evangelical ministry, I've been a Trump supporter. That being said, Donald Trump has named Nigeria a country of particular interest regarding human rights, religious freedom. Speak, if you would, broad picture, great specifics about this administration's advocacy for human rights and religious freedom versus previous administrations.
Yeah, I'll speak to what you just mentioned, the countries of particular concern. Now, Nigeria was on that list, and President Trump put in his first term put Nigeria on that list because of the violence that was happening. One of the first things that President Biden did in 2021, when he was elected during his term, he took Nigeria off the country of particular concern list. And the reason that he did that, there's some skepticism as to why he did that, but it by and large has to do with if a country is has been declared by the State Department to be on a country of particular concern list, there's a lot of restrictions that go on that country and restrictions to our country in the way that we can and cannot interact with them as far as imports, exports. Nigeria has some of the largest airlines in the country of Africa. We supply a lot of airplanes to those airlines. There's restrictions put on parts. There's restrictions put on trade. There's restrictions put on all kinds of economic things. President Biden took Nigeria off that list. All the while, thousands of Christians are being killed every single year. He absolutely knew better than to take it off, and his reasons for doing so were to leverage those Christians being persecuted so that he could open trade, so that he could open other areas economically. Now, what happened just hours ago, I just read this, President Trump put out an investigation, called for an investigation on Nigeria. And in that call for the investigation, he claimed and declared that Nigeria was to be put back on the country of particular concern list. That does a whole nother level of scrutiny into Nigeria. And that's absolutely what's needed right now. President Trump called out the jihadists who are killing Christians in northern Nigeria. He even stated some facts and data that we have been collecting over the years. So he's very serious about this, and I'm glad that he is. I'm thankful that we have a president that is concerned about Christians elsewhere. And because I work in Nigeria, I'm glad that we have a president that's concerned about the killing of Christians in Nigeria.
Indeed, indeed. And, speaking really in the language that people only understand with force and economic sanctions and things like that to get them to, recognize the humanity and the rights of others. So let me ask you this. I think it speaks well. This is not just a tacit nod. I mean, this shows the president is informed about this, making seriously informed decisions, isn't he?
Yeah, it absolutely does. He called for Congressman Cole to get into this and investigate it. He called for the Foreign Relations Committee also and the Appropriations Committee also to be investigating this. And he's in that, he put it out on a tweet actually. And what he said was that he wanted that report back immediately. So he's very serious about this, and I hope that he does it. Now, Ted Cruz also introduced legislation about 4 weeks ago that basically will do several things. One, it will put sanctions on Nigeria. This legislation is sitting in the Foreign Relations Committee right now. And with the government shutdown, everything's kind of slowed down. But we're hoping that it passes and gets to the president's desk. But this legislation will put sanctions on Nigeria if they are involved in anti-Christian activity. It also puts sanctions on the local governors who are involved in promoting Sharia law in northern Nigeria, because that's a big element to this. Is Sharia law sort of creates the catalyst for all of this to happen. And that legislation also calls for Nigeria to be put on the country of particular concern list. But it looks like President Trump is going to go ahead and do that despite the legislation being passed, which is just fine with me. And then also he wants to put Boko Haram and ISWA on the entities of particular concern list with the State Department. So that legislation is compelling the State Department to do something about it. So I am glad to see Congress and the president doing something about this. I wish that the State Department would stop dragging their feet, though.
Our guest is Brad Brandon of acrossnigeria.org. Let me ask you this. What can churches and individual Christians do? I've been a pastor of 2 churches and preached in literally 2,000. We're so blessed in America, and we shouldn't feel bad about that, but I think God blesses us to be a blessing. Would you recommend churches pray, pray very specifically, whether it be northern Nigeria or Yemen or Iraq or Syria, North Korea, China, Saudi Arabia? Wouldn't it be good for churches maybe to adopt a nation and fervently intercede and pray for advocacy on behalf of the at-risk Christians worldwide? Give us some advice and call to action for our American churches.
Yeah, God is the solution to the problem. I mean, even as much as I'm glad to see the legislation and the president getting involved, they're not the solution to the problem. They might be able to help, but they're not the solution. God is the solution to the problem, and the gospel of Jesus Christ is the solution to this problem. And so what that takes is a church that is on our knees praying for these issues. And I love your idea about adopting a country, each church adopting a country. And when I say pray, I don't mean kind of like in that polite way that we as Christians say, well, I'll pray for you. I mean, the church needs to actively be getting on our knees, interceding on behalf of these Christians who are suffering every single day. It's not just the number of deaths that are happening in northern Nigeria and elsewhere around the world. Christians, hundreds of thousands of Christians are being displaced every single year because of the violence. Muslims go in, burn a village out, everybody loses their homes. They go into internally displaced persons camps. Those conditions are short on water, short on food, short on medical care. The conditions in those camps are horrific. I've spent a considerable amount of time. So it's not just the number of killings that are happening, it's the suffering that's happening. Right now in Nigeria alone, there's 3.5 million people living in displaced persons camps under horrible conditions. 80% of those camps, the populations are Christians because they've been displaced by the violence. So I think actively getting on our knees and praying for them. In order to pray, we have to be aware. The Satan loves to operate under the cover of darkness, and it's our job as Christians to uncover those things and bring light to the hidden things of darkness. That's what we're doing at Across Nigeria. And so it is our job to bring awareness to the people. The church is becoming more and more aware of what's going on in northern Nigeria, and with that awareness comes a responsibility to respond in prayer. But I also want to add this. The Bible teaches us that when we are given much, much is required. There is not a church in the history of church history that has been given more than the American church right now. Imagine the load of responsibility that we have to give back to the world. And one of the ways that we can do that is to help those who are being persecuted, earnestly pray for them, and support them any way that we can.
Well, Brad Brandon, what a challenge, and we aim to do just that. And this will not be the last time that we speak. I want to keep this as a front burner issue. I want to appreciate your time right now, and your website again, acrossnigeria.org. Sir, I applaud you. Thank you for your time today, and let's converse again soon.
Let's do it. Thanks, Alex. I appreciate it.
Folks, we've got a brief break. We're going to come back. Stay tuned. More of this important issue on this edition of the Alex McFarland Show.
In a time when our culture faces unprecedented challenges,
the question is not, will we legislate morality? The question is, whose morality is going to be imposed on the people?
Alex McFarland addresses the hard questions about faith, morality, and culture.
Jesus rose from the dead, then that proves he is the Son of God, but it also proves that he loves you.
For over 20 years, Alex McFarland Ministries has reached nearly 1 million people in person and countless more through media. From youth conferences to national platforms, Alex brings clarity to complex issues, inspiring audiences to stand firm in their faith.
God wants to do things in your life and through your life that will count for eternity.
In a world searching for answers, Alex McFarland offers biblical truth with conviction and compassion. Bring Alex McFarland to your next event. Equip your audience to boldly stand for truth in these critical times.
In the book of Revelation, chapter 7, it talks about the martyrs, 144,000 believers during the tribulation period that are executed by the Antichrist because of their stand for the Lamb, Jesus Christ. Hi, Alex McFarland here. But you know, the martyrdom of believers, it's not just at some future point during the Great Tribulation. It's happened throughout history. It's happening right now. You know, several years ago, I went to a conference in Amsterdam that the Billy Graham Ministry put on for evangelists. I was very honored to be invited. There weren't that many from the USA that got invited. There were people from all over the world. And I was standing on a train platform in the city of Amsterdam, and I began to talk to some brothers from India. And it was very exciting for me. Here we are in Europe. We're over the streets of Amsterdam and in the Netherlands, seeing hundreds of people come to Christ. But I was talking to these men from India, and they said that there was a certain minister friend that was going to come with them, but they were in an area of intense persecution by militant Hindus. See, here in America, you don't think of Hinduism as being a militant religion of persecution, and yet in parts of the world, like under Modi in India, Christians are very much hunted and killed. These men in Amsterdam, they said that their Christian pastor friend was beheaded, that some of the Hindus knew he was coming to Amsterdam, he was going to get more and more training, come back and even do more for the gospel. And they said it was very demoralizing. They decapitated this pastor, and they didn't give his head, and very gruesome to think about. They had to have a funeral with just the body, the headless body. And I was just speechless to think about what Christians in other parts of the world go through to take a stand for Christ. And we here in America, I love America. I'm thankful for America. But probably just about the worst thing we Americans ever suffer on behalf of the gospel is if the pastor is 10 minutes late, and Sunday when we get to the lunch buffet, the Methodists are ahead of us. And we think, oh, it was terrible. I'm not trying to be flippant, but the fact is, like Brad was telling us, in northern Nigeria and in so much of the Islamic world, to say the name of Jesus, you have just put a target on your back. So what do we do here in America? Well, we need to be aware of the reality that this little island, this sanctuary of prosperity and safety and liberty and freedom, it is so rare. And with these great blessings of stability and security and affluence comes the responsibility to be a blessing. You know, John 16:2, the Lord Jesus said, the day will come when those who kill you think they are doing God a service. And we're living in that day, my goodness, whether it be the jihadist, the terrorists, the Sharia advocates, or militants of any ideology that think they can stop Christianity by killing the Christians, it's wrong. What we need to do, we need to face the reality of spiritual warfare. We need to pray. Remember, specific prayers get specific answers. James 4:2, the Lord Jesus said, "You have not because you ask not." If you want persecution to stop in Nigeria or wherever, or China, we need to pray and intercede and agree with God. Then we need to be equipped and influence others. Pastors, and I am a pastor, you need to get the courage to get in your pulpit and call out these nations where the killing of Christians is taking place. And we need to call our people to vote and vote for courageous, principled leaders that will stand for true human rights and the religious freedom of Christians. And then we need to give, and not only our money, but of ourselves. Take mission trips to the most dangerous parts of the world. And folks, we need to know truth, defend truth, live truth, even die for truth, as some in the world are doing. Would you like a book to help you understand the biblical prophecies, the passages about the end of time? Hi, Alex McFarland. You know, for well over a decade, Bert Harper and I have been on the nationally syndicated AFR show, Exploring the Word. Over 3,000 shows we've done together, and Bert and I have a brand new book as of fall 2025, 100 Bible questions and answers on prophecy and the end times. You can get it at booksellers everywhere. Our brand new book, Bert Harper, Alex McFarland, Exploring the Word, 100 Bible questions and answers on prophecy and the end times, published by our great friends at Broad Street Publishing. Check it out, and we believe it will help you understand how to live and thrive in these last days. As this year draws to a close, I want to thank the many people who have invested in our work, and through conferences, events, digital content, thousands of books have been given away freely as people have indicated a salvation decision for Christ. We've got such great opportunities in the year ahead. So please pray and invest. Please donate today. Go to alexmcfarland.com, and would you send your best gift, and we will continue using it for reaching souls for Christ.